What is your never again brand, store, restaurant, or company? I took my woods truck, a rusty old Tacoma I keep mostly for hauling firewood and the occasional run to the quarry, into a local tire shop for an alignment. Nothing fancy. The truck's old, but it still runs fine, and I keep up on maintenance. The steering had started to feel a little floaty on the road, and the wear on the front tires was uneven, so I figured an alignment couldn't hurt. The shop wasn't a chain, just a local place with a slick front desk guy and a big sign out front that said, Certified Techs, honest work. I dropped the truck off in the morning and went across the street for coffee, expecting to be out of there in an hour, maybe two. About 45 minutes later, I got a call. Hey, yeah, we couldn't do the alignment. You've got a sticky U-joint. It needs to be replaced first. I asked if they meant the drive shaft U-joint or the one in the steering column, and the guy just paused. Front suspension, he said. It's binding up and throwing off the angles. We couldn't get an accurate read. Now, I'm a mechanical engineer. I've worked on cars, trucks, hydraulic systems, and everything in between. I've rebuilt transmissions and helped design drivetrains. I'm not saying I know everything, but I do know that a U-joint, especially one they're vaguely calling front suspension, isn't a reason to not do an alignment. It might affect the feel of the steering or cause some vibrations, but it doesn't stop you from adjusting camber and toe. At worst, you note the problem, adjust around it, and recommend replacement. So I told him I'd be right over. When I got there, my truck was still on the lift, and the service guy was waiting with the invoice already printed. 1 hour of labor, $110. I looked at it. Wait, I said. You're charging me for an alignment you didn't perform? No, he said. We had to take the tie rods off and check everything before we determined the U-joint was the issue. So that's the labor. Now, here's the thing. You do not need to take off tie rods to assess an alignment issue. You certainly don't remove them without replacing them. And there's no scenario where you remove them just to poke around. It made zero sense. So I asked to see the parts they removed. He hesitated, then said the tech had already put everything back together. Okay, I said. Can I take a look? He clearly didn't want me back there, but after a little back and forth, he walked me into the garage. The truck was down, parked in the corner now. I squatted down and looked at the tie rods. They were filthy, caked with an inch-thick layer of grime, road salt, and old grease. The castle nuts hadn't been touched. Still had intact cotter pins that looked like they'd been in there for years. No fresh tool marks, no handprints on the lower arms, nothing. There was no way they'd taken anything off. So I stood up and turned to the guy. Show me where you touched the tie rods. He started stammering something about internal adjustment and torque readings, and at that point I asked for the manager. Big guy came out, older, maybe late 50s, wearing a shop uniform that looked like it hadn't been dirty in years. Desk manager in disguise. He tried to double down. Well, ma'am, he said, on some vehicles, especially older ones, the U-joint will seize up and prevent accurate alignment readings. We have to disassemble the front steering linkage to diagnose that. I just stared at him. I'm a mechanical engineer, I said. You didn't take anything apart. The cotter pins haven't moved. The grime's untouched. Nothing's been disassembled. And U-joints, especially ones you're not even naming properly, don't affect static alignment readings. What you're saying doesn't make sense. He got defensive, said I clearly didn't understand how alignments work on Toyota suspensions. I told him I understood just fine and I'd be contacting the state bureau that handles automotive service fraud. He got quiet. I didn't pay the invoice. I walked out with a copy and drove straight home. Filed a complaint that night with the Bureau of Automotive Repair. Attached photos of the untouched tie rods, included a transcript of my conversation with the manager, thank you, voice memo app, and wrote a clear explanation of the BS story they tried to feed me. It took about 6 weeks. I got a call from an investigator who said they'd gone out to inspect the shop and interview the employees. He told me I wasn't the only one. Turns out they had a pattern of charging for diagnostics and partial labor on services they never actually started. A few customers had complained, but none had evidence. My photos and voice recording were apparently the nail in the coffin. They were fined. Not shut down, but dinged hard enough it went on their public record. Their reviews tanked after a few people dug it up and shared their own stories. I didn't get a refund. State's not really in the business of customer compensation, but I didn't care. I wanted them on record. I wanted someone to hold them accountable. They thought they could take advantage of me because I'm a woman, because I showed up in a rusty old beater, because I didn't raise my voice or throw a fit when they handed me the bill. They figured I'd pay and walk away. Never again. Not with that shop. Not with any place that tries to pull that kind of scam. Still driving the same woods truck. Got the alignment done somewhere else for $75. Tech there laughed when I told him the story and said my tie rods hadn't been touched in at least a decade. Exactly.